It was 2:14 in the morning when I got the message. It was my best friend, just one sentence, but I could feel the fear behind it. I think I messed up, really bad. I didn't need coffee. I was wide awake in seconds. She didn't usually panic, not like this. And when I called her, her voice cracked before she said a single word. She told me she had been talking to someone online. Nothing too crazy. It started out playful, flirty, friendly. They met on some app. He was charming, a little too charming. But she didn't want to overthink it. He said all the right things, knew how to make her laugh, knew when to disappear just long enough to make her miss him. She sent him a few pictures, private ones. He didn't push her. At first, he made her feel safe. He told her she was beautiful, told her he was coming to her city for work soon, and they'd finally meet. She believed him, because people want to believe they matter to someone. But then, things changed. One night, she backed out of their planned meetup, said she got nervous, didn't feel right about it. And that's when the mask dropped. The sweet guy turned cold. He started making threats, said he'd post the pictures online, send them to her job, her family, her school. He called her names, demanded more, said he'd ruin her life if she didn't cooperate. She blocked him. He made new accounts, multiple ones, kept coming back like a disease that wouldn't go away. And that's when she called me. What she didn't know was that I'm not just her best friend. I'm also a licensed attorney, and I've dealt with enough human trash in my line of work to know exactly what to do. The first thing I asked her was, "How much do you know about him?" She said not much, just a screen name, his first name, or what he claimed it was, roughly where he lived, what kind of work he did, and that he might be traveling to our city soon. That was it. He wasn't in the country, which, to most people, would feel like the end of the road. But not to me, not when you know how to look. I told her to forward me every screenshot, every photo, every handle, every message, and I got to work. First stop, his screen name. Most people reuse them, so I ran it through TikTok. Boom, a profile came up. Wasn't locked. Public videos. His voice, his face. That led me to his Instagram. Same username, same face, different platform. He had a highlight reel labeled Work. Rookie move. I clicked it. There he was, wearing a branded company polo, smiling, talking into the camera. Thank you, idiot. That logo gave me his employer. Then I ran a LinkedIn search. Name plus company equals his full profile. Job title, location. Face matched the photos he sent my friend. We had him. Now that I had a name and workplace, I wanted more. I looked at the images he sent her, carelessly trying to prove he was real. One had him posing next to a motorcycle. Zoom in, license plate. Now I had his state and city. Another photo showed his office, with a whiteboard in the background. On it, confidential project notes, internal calendars, visible employee names. A different photo showed his work laptop, with his Outlook calendar wide open. Emails, meeting links, proprietary files. His arrogance was a gift. I compiled everything into a folder. Every screenshot, every threat, every message tied to his screen name, every photo that proved his identity, including one where he bragged about having sex with an ex at his workplace. He even mentioned in messages that he wanted to hook up with my friend in his office. Yes, you read that right. He not only violated consent, he violated company policies and potentially criminal statutes. I took a deep breath, opened a blank email, and CC'd 4 people: the CEO of his company, the VP of Human Resources, the operations manager, and the director of public relations. Subject line, urgent, employee involved in criminal blackmail and privacy violations. Attached, screenshots, photos, links. identifying evidence. I explained, as an attorney, that this was not only a revenge porn threat, but also a breach of workplace integrity, misuse of company equipment, and a potential federal crime, since the victim was a U.S. citizen on U.S. soil, and he had discussed travel plans that would place him here shortly. And I made one thing very clear: if they continued to employ him, if they planned to send him to the United States for work, I would ensure federal law enforcement was waiting for him the moment he stepped off the plane. I hit send on the email, and then I waited. I wasn't sure how fast they'd respond. Companies tend to move slow, but this time, I got a reply within 12 minutes. It was the VP of HR. Short, formal. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We take matters of this nature extremely seriously. We are reviewing the materials immediately and initiating an internal investigation. We will be in contact shortly." Translation? They were panicking. I knew the moment they opened that folder and saw the proof. The photos, the screenshots, the timestamps, the work laptop, the calendar. They realized exactly what kind of PR nightmare they were staring down. Their branded shirt, their company office, their employee. Threatening a woman with revenge porn across international borders? Yeah, that's not something you clean up with a press release. 10 minutes after that email, I got another message from the Director of Public Relations. They wanted to schedule a call, right now. I didn't take it. I wrote back, "I will only speak through legal counsel. The victim in this case is a U.S. citizen. She is entitled to full protection under U.S. and international law. I've already prepared a dossier for local law enforcement in your country, as well as documentation for the FBI Cybercrime Division. If you wish to proceed with transparency, I suggest you begin by suspending the employee immediately and issuing a formal statement of cooperation." Silence for 2 minutes. Then they replied, "Understood. We are taking immediate action." I could have stopped there, but I didn't, because while the company may have been scrambling to cover themselves, I wanted him to feel it. I wanted him to know what it feels like to have your entire sense of control ripped away, the same way he tried to rip it from her. So I drafted another email, this time to him. I didn't threaten. I didn't yell. I just laid out the facts. I told him exactly who I was, that I represented the woman he tried to blackmail, that I had all his screenshots, that I had identified him, his workplace, his location, that I had photographic proof, chat logs, metadata, and witnesses. I explained that under U.S. Code Section 2261A, the Federal Cyberstalking and Revenge Porn Statute, his actions constituted a felony offense, especially given his interstate and international activity. And then I said, "You thought you were anonymous. You thought a screen name protected you. But all it took me was 45 minutes to pull apart your entire life. You're not hidden anymore. You're exposed. And now the only question left is how badly this ends for you." I hit send and waited. I didn't hear from him right away, but my friend did. 10 minutes later, he messaged her, frantic. "What did you do? Why are they calling me? Why is my job involved?" Then came the panic. "Please, I didn't mean it. I was just angry. I wasn't going to actually post anything. Please don't ruin my life." There it is, the same guy who was fearless when he thought she was powerless, now suddenly begging, now suddenly scared, now suddenly the victim. My friend sent me a screenshot of his messages. She asked, "What do I say?" I told her, nothing, because he wasn't her problem anymore. Let him sweat. Let him deal with the storm he created. I told her to block him again, this time permanently. That night, I finished compiling the report for his local police department, included every piece of evidence, clearly laid out the timeline, provided his full identity, LinkedIn, license plate, photos, and IP-linked communications. And then I forwarded that same report to my contact, a federal prosecutor I went to law school with. I didn't even have to explain much. Just said, "This is real. He's planning to travel into the country next month for work. I have proof he's engaged in interstate threats targeting a U.S. citizen. Let me know if you need me to make the call to DHS or CBP." He texted back a thumbs up and a single sentence, "He won't make it past customs." And just like that, it was done. 45 minutes. That's how long it took me to dismantle his fantasy of being untouchable. Because you know what predators always forget? There's always someone smarter. Someone watching. Someone who won't stay silent. The next morning, my inbox lit up again. It was from the VP of HR, this time with a new subject line. "Action taken, formal acknowledgement." I opened it slowly, knowing full well what it would say, but still wanting to read every word. "We want to formally acknowledge your email and the supporting documentation regarding our employee. After internal review, we have suspended him indefinitely pending a full investigation. We have also reported the incident to our internal compliance board and external legal advisors. Please be assured we are taking this matter with the utmost seriousness and confidentiality." Translation? He's in trouble. Serious trouble. And they're trying to stay ahead of the PR storm by taking swift action. But here's the thing about corporate damage control. It's never about doing the right thing. It's about being seen as doing the right thing. So I wasn't done yet. I replied with a short message. "Thank you. I will be forwarding this case to U.S. federal authorities today. Any updates from your legal or compliance team should be copied to my firm's general inbox going forward. Also, be advised, if any retaliation, suppression, or misinformation is discovered in how you handle this employee or communicate with law enforcement, we will pursue liability under negligent retention and corporate misconduct laws." That last line, it always gets their attention. Because now it's not just about one predator. It's about their entire company being complicit. An hour later, I got a call I wasn't expecting. It was the CEO. Yes, the actual CEO of the company. They wanted to speak directly. I agreed to a recorded call, and they sounded shaken. Not defensive, not angry, just rattled. They started with the usual, "I want to personally apologize for the actions of one of our employees. This behavior is disgusting, unacceptable, and not representative of our values." And while I let them talk, I wasn't there for their PR script. I interrupted. "I appreciate your statement, but I want to know what you're doing to prevent this from happening again. Are you updating your employee screening process? Are you issuing mandatory digital behavior training? Or is this just going to be one of those 'we fired him and moved on' situations?" Silence for a few seconds. Then a heavy sigh. They admitted they had no formal digital conduct training, that this was a wake-up call, and that they were consulting with internal counsel about issuing a workplace policy update and including online harassment in their ethics training. That was a start. Not enough, but a start. I ended the call with one request. Send her a written apology, not from your legal team, from you. Let her know she was heard, that this wasn't just handled for liability's sake, but because it was the right thing to do. They promised they would, and later that night, she got the email, a real one, not corporate fluff. Meanwhile, my report had already been submitted to his local police. And I'd spoken with a contact at the FBI's Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. Yes, even though my friend is an adult, these divisions also investigate cyberstalking, blackmail, and cross-border threats. They were taking it seriously. Because once you cross that international line and threaten a U.S. citizen with digital abuse, that's federal territory, and they don't mess around. My friend called me later that week. She sounded different. Not scared, just lighter. She said, "I can finally sleep again." That broke me a little, because for weeks, maybe months, she'd been walking around with this knot of fear inside her, afraid every notification meant exposure, afraid he'd follow through, afraid she was ruined. And now she had proof that someone had her back, that he was the one who should be afraid. And he was. He went quiet, deleted his social media, went private on every platform, scrubbed everything he could. But the thing about the internet is, you don't get to delete consequences. You can try to vanish, but the receipts live forever. And I already had everything I needed, saved, time-stamped, and printed. There was no putting the genie back in the bottle. At that point, I could have walked away, but I didn't, because this story, our story, wasn't just about one predator and one victim. It was about every woman who's ever felt powerless against a man hiding behind a screen. It was about every person who thought their silence was the only option. And I wasn't going to let this end quietly. After the dust began to settle, at least from our side, I started getting messages. First, it was a single DM on my firm's Instagram account, then an email, then another, all from different women. Some were hesitant, some were angry, some were scared. But all of them had the same story. I think he did this to me too. Different apps, different names, same MO. He'd find women online, charm them, build trust, get private photos, and then flip. Threaten, manipulate, scare them into silence. What he did to my friend wasn't new. It was routine. We weren't dealing with a mistake. We were dealing with a pattern. He'd been playing this game with women for years, and he thought he'd get away with it. Until now. I spoke with one woman, let's call her Maria. She told me she'd been harassed by him a year ago. Same username, same messages, same pressure. But she never reported it. Why? Because she was ashamed, because she blamed herself, because he made her feel like it was her fault. And honestly, that pissed me off more than anything. Not at her, at him. Because that's the game these cowards play. They know people feel ashamed. They know it's hard to speak up, so they keep going, victim after victim, hidden behind screens and fake names. I compiled every message, every news statement, and opened a new folder on my drive. Multiple victims, civil pattern of behavior. Because this wasn't just a criminal case anymore. It was turning into a civil action. Possibly even a class action claim, if enough women came forward. I started building out timelines, cross-referencing usernames, looking for repeat language and tactics. He was sloppy and consistent. The language was nearly copy-paste. You can trust me. Don't worry, I don't save anything. Just send one. If you don't, I will. I'll ruin you. It was like reading a disgusting script, one he used again and again, until it finally got him caught. At this point, law enforcement in his country had acknowledged the report. They reached out for a written affidavit. I drafted it and sent it off, attaching every supporting file, full case folder, testimony, contact information for victims willing to speak. I also got confirmation from a federal contact in the U.S. that his name had been flagged in the immigration database. If his company even thought about flying him in, border agents would be alerted before he even boarded the plane. He wouldn't step foot on U.S. soil again without answering for what he did. And I was just getting started. Meanwhile, my friend, the one he threatened first, was finally smiling again. Not the forced smile, not the polite one, a real one. We sat down one night over tea, and she looked at me and said, "I never thought anyone would believe me. I thought I'd just carry it forever." I told her the truth. You're not alone, and you're not the one who should feel ashamed. Because the shame was never hers, it was his. And now the whole world was beginning to see that. Funny thing about exposing someone like that? Once one person comes forward, more do too. Because courage is contagious. And for every woman he thought he broke, we were building something stronger than fear. We were building a record, a network, a force. I reached out to a journalist I knew, someone who covered tech, privacy, and cybercrime. I gave them everything, anonymously. The story, the pattern, the screenshots, the investigation. They ran a piece the next week titled, "The Man Behind the Messages: How a Predator's Digital Trail Got Him Caught in 45 Minutes." It didn't name him, not yet, but it named the behavior, and it hit hard. Thousands of shares, hundreds of comments, more women speaking up. This wasn't just about one guy anymore. It was about all of them. Every predator hiding behind a screen, and every woman learning they could finally speak. I knew he was spiraling the moment I saw the new message. Not from him. He'd gone dark. This was from a coworker of his. "Hi. I don't know if this is weird, but I think I work with the guy you exposed. People in the office are talking. It's getting messy." That's when I realized the company didn't keep this internal. They were talking about it. They were investigating loudly. And people were starting to distance themselves from him. Fast. The employee told me he hadn't been in the office in days. Rumor was he'd been put on leave. No one knew if he was coming back. His work email? Deactivated. Access badge? Suspended. LinkedIn? Gone. Instagram? Private. He was vanishing, piece by piece. Later that day, my friend got a new email from a different address than before. No subject line. She almost deleted it without opening it. But curiosity won out. It was him. And this time, he was begging. "I made a mistake. Please, I'm losing everything. My job, my reputation, my life. I wasn't serious when I made those threats. I was angry. Please don't take this any further." No apology, no real remorse, just fear. The same fear he tried to put into her. But now, it was sitting squarely in his chest. And I promise you, that's not even close to what he deserved. I told her not to respond. I told her we would handle the next step by the book. I added that email to the case file. Another example of him contacting her after being warned. Another piece of digital evidence. Because while he thought he was saving himself, he was just digging deeper. Meanwhile, the fallout kept growing. 3 more women came forward that week. Different platforms, same behavior, same manipulation, same screen name, slightly altered each time. One of them, we'll call her Jess, told me something I won't forget. She said, "I reported him to the platform. They removed the account, but that was it. I felt like I didn't matter. Like my pain didn't matter." And that's what made this whole thing bigger than just revenge. It was about making sure this kind of thing doesn't get buried again. Because too many people think these threats are just online drama. Too many people think screenshots aren't real evidence. Too many people look the other way. I wasn't going to let that happen. Not this time. The journalist I'd spoken to earlier followed up. They'd gotten more tips, more women, more screenshots. And now? They were working on a follow-up article. This one would name the company, expose how many internal complaints had already been buried, and demand they release a public statement. I gave them permission to use my name. Not my friend's, obviously, but mine. Because if predators like him were going to operate in the shadows, I wanted to be the one who dragged them into the light. A few days later, I received another official email from his company's legal team. Subject line: termination and cooperation confirmation. Inside it read, "As of today, he has been formally terminated for cause. We have turned over our findings and digital logs to local authorities and will comply with any further legal action." There it was. He was done. Not suspended, not quietly relocated, terminated. And not because of one mistake, but because we refused to stay quiet. Because we pushed. Because we exposed. Because we fought back. I called my friend the moment I read it. She cried. Not the broken kind, the relieved kind, the finally I can breathe again kind. She asked me, "Does this mean it's over?" And I said, "Not yet, but it means he doesn't get to scare you anymore." Because what he didn't realize was that this wasn't just a one-time fight. This was the beginning of something bigger, something louder, something that wouldn't just end with him losing his job. It would end with a warning for anyone else who thinks they're untouchable online. After the company terminated him, things got quiet. Too quiet. No messages, no threats, no updates. And in my world, silence is never peace. It's the pause before the next storm. So I kept pushing. I checked in with the police department in his area. They confirmed they'd received my full report, and more importantly, they'd officially opened a case. It had a file number, a detective assigned, a digital forensic team attached. He was no longer just some guy behind a screen. He was now part of an active criminal investigation. That same week, I got confirmation from my federal contact that he had been entered into the CBP database, flagged under incoming traveler watch. In plain terms, if he ever tried to enter the U.S. for work, vacation, or anything else, he'd be stopped, pulled aside, and questioned, possibly even detained, depending on what charges stuck by then. The moment he landed, the game would be over. Meanwhile, I gathered impact statements. My friend was the first to submit hers. It wasn't long, but it was powerful. She talked about the fear, the anxiety, the self-blame. She wrote, "I stopped going outside. I stopped checking my phone. I kept waiting to be exposed, even in places I should have felt safe. He didn't just threaten my privacy. He tried to control my life. And I want the court to know what that does to someone." It wasn't easy for her to write that, but she did it. Because this time, she wasn't afraid anymore. The other women added theirs too. Different voices, same message. He thought this would all fade away. He thought people would forget. He thought the worst that could happen was getting blocked. Instead, now he had a paper trail that would follow him for life. He had an open case, evidence piling up, a legal team watching every move he made. He wasn't just losing his job or reputation. He was losing the illusion of control. And for someone like him, that's the most painful punishment of all. One night, around 11 p.m., I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. It was the detective assigned to the case in his city. He introduced himself, thanked me for the thorough documentation, and said, "We're moving forward with charges." I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I exhaled. He continued, "We've contacted the company for their internal logs and timestamps. We're preparing a warrant for his devices. His online activity, browser history, apps, it's all going to be reviewed." This wasn't a warning anymore. This was real-world consequences. I messaged my friend right after and told her. She didn't reply for a while. Then she sent just one message. "Thank you for not letting him win." But here's the truth. It wasn't just about not letting him win. It was about showing him and every predator like him that their time hiding behind a screen is over, because people like him count on 3 things: shame, silence, and disbelief. They think victims won't speak. They think no one will care. They think they'll get away with it because they always have. But what they don't count on is someone like me, someone who knows the law, who knows how to connect dots, who knows how to push until the cracks become collapse. A few days later, I received one more letter from his attorney. That's right, he lawyered up. The letter was an attempt to open a dialogue. They wanted to discuss the possibility of settlement without public legal action. Translation? He was scared. He didn't want his name going viral. He didn't want court records. He didn't want this to end with his face on a news headline. But this wasn't about money. It never was. So I responded with 6 words. We'll see you in court. After I sent that message, we'll see you in court, I half expected silence. But instead, I got a reply the next day. A full page from his attorney. Carefully worded. Desperate, but polished. Our client is prepared to offer a written apology and financial compensation in exchange for your client's agreement not to pursue civil or criminal action. There it was. The panic. He was trying to pay his way out. Like this was a business deal. Like her trauma had a price tag. But this wasn't a negotiation. This was justice. I forwarded the email to the detective handling the case and added it to the growing file. Because if you're under investigation for online blackmail and cross-border threats, and your legal team is offering hush money, that's not a good look in front of a judge. Meanwhile, the media had picked up the story. The original article by the journalist I helped, it exploded. It didn't name him, but it didn't have to. People recognized the behavior. More women, even some outside our country, began speaking up. Same tactics, same phrases, same screenshots. It was like watching a dark spiderweb of secrets unravel in real time. One of the women was from Brazil, another from France. He'd been running this scheme across multiple countries, and now that web was on fire. My inbox was flooded. Support, gratitude, anger, and one message I'll never forget. From a woman in her 40s. I thought I was the only one. I never even told my husband. But reading that article gave me the courage to speak. That's what this story was really about. Not revenge, not power, not even winning. It was about liberation. About telling the people who've been silenced, you are not alone, and telling the predators, you are not invisible. As the days passed, I began prepping for what came next, legal filings. We had enough for a civil harassment claim, intentional infliction of emotional distress, cyberstalking and blackmail evidence, and defamation based on the messages he'd sent about my client online. It was solid, clean, documented. And thanks to the other women coming forward, we could potentially file a class action suit under international tort law. I notified his attorney. Their tone changed again. Would your client be open to mediation? Mediation? I had to laugh. They went from bold to begging in less than 2 weeks. I called my friend and asked her honestly, "Do you want this to go to court, or do you want closure?" She paused, then said, "I want him to know he didn't break me, and I want every girl he ever scared to know they're not crazy and they're not alone." That was her answer. So we moved forward. The court process began. We submitted official filings, attached evidence, named witnesses, filed a formal request for injunctive relief to prevent him from contacting her ever again. The judge signed it within 48 hours, and just like that, he was legally forbidden to speak to her. One more brick in the wall between him and the damage he caused. Meanwhile, his company issued a public statement. They didn't name him either, but they confirmed that an employee had been terminated following a serious breach of digital ethics and corporate policy. They also promised to roll out a mandatory digital conduct training program for all employees worldwide. Small steps, but real ones. And him? He disappeared from the internet. No social media, no public posts. Just a trail of deleted accounts and unanswered messages. But I wasn't worried, because you can disappear online all you want. You can't delete court filings. You can't delete police reports. And you sure as hell can't delete the damage you caused. 2 weeks after the public statement from his employer, something unexpected happened. I got an email from a human rights organization based in Canada. They had read the article, and they were reaching out on behalf of several international victims who'd come forward. Women who until now thought they didn't stand a chance of ever being believed. We've had 3 women contact us from different countries with very similar stories, all pointing back to the same person. Same username pattern, same approach, same threats. It was bigger than even I realized. This wasn't just one predator abusing trust online. It was systemic. He had built a routine, a formula, a playbook, and now it was being exposed piece by piece. They asked if I'd be open to sharing what we'd found, and of course, I said yes, because if this wasn't just about one victim, then the justice couldn't stop at one courtroom. It had to spread. We worked together, their legal contacts, my firm, and the journalist from the original story, to map out a digital profile. Same screen name, same style of messages, same region, same photos reused in different conversations. Every breadcrumb mattered, and one by one, they connected. We confirmed 7 more victims across 4 countries, and the pattern was clear. Isolate them, gain trust, ask for private photos, threaten to leak them if they refused more. Disappear when it got too real. But this time, he had nowhere to disappear to. His attorney must have felt the pressure building too. They sent another letter. This one had a very different tone. Our client wishes to formally apologize to all affected individuals. He expresses deep regret and acknowledges his wrongdoing. He is prepared to submit to the court's decision and comply with any restrictions issued. Let me be very clear. This was not remorse. This was damage control. This was the legal version of throwing yourself on the floor and begging the world not to look. But we were looking, and we weren't blinking. Back home, the court filings were moving forward. The judge had approved a protective order that extended across platforms, meaning he couldn't attempt contact through any digital channel, directly or indirectly. Violating it would mean an automatic criminal charge. And with international coordination now in motion, his actions were being flagged in multiple jurisdictions. We were working with cybercrime units to push for an Interpol Red Notice, a global alert that would prevent him from fleeing to another country to hide. We weren't just protecting one woman anymore. We were protecting every woman he hadn't found yet. I got a message from another victim, this time from Eastern Europe. She had been 18 when he contacted her. Naive, isolated, terrified. She had never told anyone before now. But reading what we did, it gave her the courage. He made me feel disgusting. He made me think I asked for it. But I see now, he was the one who should have been afraid, not me. I saved that message, because that's when I knew. This was bigger than the legal case. Bigger than the articles, bigger than him. This was about reclaiming power. The journalists published a follow-up article. This time, they told the story of the international network of victims coming forward, still without naming him, to protect the ongoing case, but the story was crystal clear. The headline? How one predator was exposed across borders, and why more are speaking up. It went viral, again. But this time, other news outlets picked it up. Suddenly, his city, the one where he was living quietly, had people talking. Neighbors started whispering. Former co-workers started digging. And his reputation, the one he'd built so carefully, behind fake names and polished photos, shattered. I didn't celebrate, because this was never about revenge. It was about justice. And justice doesn't scream. It doesn't dance on grays. It works quietly, slowly, steadily, until there's nothing left for the guilty to hide behind. It had been just over a month since this all started, and by then, the damage was irreversible for him. Every lie he told, every name he used, every woman he manipulated, all of it was connected now. All of it was documented, and slowly, it began to spread beyond just victims and police. It reached people he never thought would find out. His family, his neighbors, his old classmates, even a few people he used to work with from a different company years ago, reached out to the journalist. And what they shared, it blew the lid off everything. One woman, let's call her Nina, said she recognized him the second she saw the article, even without his name being listed. He did it to me back in 2019. I thought I imagined it. I thought maybe I misunderstood the way he talked to me. Maybe I overreacted. No, she didn't overreact. He had just done it so early in his pattern, before he got bolder, more careless, more arrogant, before he started pushing boundaries online like they didn't exist. Now, all those old red flags were being recolored with truth. And it wasn't just Nina. Another woman, Samira, said he used to joke about collecting girls from around the world. Sick, right? Except it wasn't a joke. It was a blueprint. I kept all of these new testimonies, time-stamped, labeled, organized. They became part of the master file. One day, when this case is heard fully in court, the judge will be staring at a mountain of evidence, not a he said, she said pile of screenshots. Because when you commit the same crime over and over and over, eventually your victims start standing shoulder to shoulder. And that's when you lose control of the story. His attorney sent one final attempt to shut it all down. A confidential settlement proposal, with a strong suggestion that we sign NDAs and resolve this outside of the media. $50,000. That's what they offered. As if that could erase trauma. As if that could buy back dignity. As if that could replace the nights my friend spent afraid to open her inbox. Or the other women who lived in guilt for years, thinking it was their fault. I didn't even dignify it with a legal counter. I just wrote, no amount of money replaces accountability. We're not here for quiet, we're here for justice. And that was the last we heard from them. From there, it was time to formalize the international coordination. The legal team from the Human Rights Organization helped push things into gear with Interpol. Thanks to multiple countries having open cases, we had enough momentum to support a cross-border criminal pattern. I submitted the digital behavior timeline, account reuse evidence, license plate imagery, photo metadata, chat transcripts, victim statements, termination letter from his company, IP logs from platforms he used. Yes, we subpoenaed one and they complied. It wasn't just a folder anymore. It was a case profile, the kind detectives love, because everything connects cleanly. No holes, no gray areas, no escape routes. One day, I got a quiet message from my friend. She wrote, "He hasn't messaged me once since the court order. I think he's finally scared." And I responded with, "Good, fear's the least he deserves, because what he tried to do wasn't just illegal, it was personal. He targeted vulnerability, exploited it, weaponized trust, and then tried to walk away from the fallout like it never happened. But that's the thing about the past. It catches up, even if it's wearing a fake username, even if it's hiding behind a VPN, because no mask is stronger than the truth. And once the truth gets out, you don't get to outrun it." Courtrooms are strange places. They're quiet, controlled, polished. But under that polished surface, there's tension. It's in the way people breathe, the way lawyers shuffle papers, the way victims walk in with their heads high, even if their hands are shaking. And that's how it felt, the first time we stood in front of a judge for this case. It wasn't a full trial, not yet, just a hearing. But it was enough. Enough to bring him in. Enough to get his name on the record. Enough to make him stand up and face every woman he ever tried to make disappear. He showed up with his attorney. Tried to look put together. Clean suit. Neutral expression. But the way he looked at the floor the entire time told me everything I needed to know. For the first time in his life, he wasn't in control of the conversation. He couldn't hide behind a screen. He couldn't close the app. He couldn't block reality. He was just there, exposed, cornered, out of option. The judge reviewed the evidence, laid out the charges, reviewed the protective order, acknowledged the multiple open cases across jurisdictions. Then they invited the victims to speak. My client, the woman he first threatened, stepped forward. She was nervous, but she didn't flinch. She read from a prepared statement. This man made me feel like I didn't deserve privacy. He made me feel dirty for trusting someone. He made me afraid to open my phone, to go to work, to exist online. But now I stand here not as his victim, but as a woman who refused to stay silent. Every word landed like thunder, and I swear, for the first time, he looked up and saw the person he tried to break, standing taller than him. Another woman spoke too, one of the international victims who flew in just for this. She told the court, he didn't just steal pictures. He stole months of my life. He stole my peace, my sleep, my joy. I lived in fear for years, but today I live in truth, and that matters more. The room was still. Even the judge seemed shaken. After all statements were read, the hearing ended. No ruling yet. Just scheduling the next phase. But that wasn't the point. The point was, he had to sit there and listen. He had to hear the voices of the women he treated like digital objects, like disposable trophies, like data he could threaten and erase. But you can't erase a voice. Not once it's found the strength to speak. Later that day, we walked out of the courthouse into the daylight. No press, no drama, just the sound of heels on pavement and heartbeats still pounding. My friend turned to me and said, "It's weird. I thought I'd feel angry, but I just feel free." And I understood, because this wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming something. Her dignity, her truth, her power. And once you take that back, no one can touch it again. The next steps were already being prepared. More documents filed, depositions scheduled, witnesses listed, digital forensics underway. We were moving closer to the trial. And he was shrinking. Because when you're guilty, truly guilty, you don't fear prison first. You fear being known. You fear your name becoming synonymous with what you did. And that was already happening. One of the women posted her statement online. It went viral. She didn't name him, but she didn't need to. It was about healing, not targeting. And in the comments, hundreds of people shared their own stories, people who had never said a word before. Victims of fake accounts, digital blackmail, manipulation, threats, people who thought they were alone until now. And reading those comments, I realized something. This case wasn't just holding one man accountable. It was making predators everywhere sweat. Because the message was loud and clear now. We're not afraid of you anymore. You're not anonymous. And we won't stay quiet just because you want us to. The courtroom wasn't even full yet, but you could feel the weight of what was about to happen. The trial was days away. And his legal team? Cracking. They'd already withdrawn 2 of their early claims. They stopped trying to deny the screenshots. They stopped trying to paint it as consensual gone wrong. Because every time they pulled out a weak defense, we pulled out receipts, hundreds of them, chat logs, metadata, account recovery emails, his own words, tying him to every threat, every scheme. At this point, the case didn't need drama to be strong. It just needed facts, and we had more than enough. A week before the trial, his lawyer reached out again. He's willing to plead guilty to reduced charges. He'll accept probation and a sealed record if the court agrees. That told me two things. He knew he was going to lose. He still wanted to disappear quietly. But we weren't here for secrecy. Not after everything he'd done. So I declined the offer, again. Told them flat out, he doesn't get to pick silence after spending years threatening others with exposure. And we moved forward. My client, the one he originally threatened, had been preparing her full testimony. It wasn't just about what happened. It was about how it changed her. And when I read through her final draft, even I had to take a breath. He made me feel like a file in a folder. Something to click, download, control. He reduced my body to leverage, and my silence to a win. But today I speak because I'm no longer carrying the shame he tried to give me. He can keep the screenshots. I'm keeping my voice. I told her to read that exactly as it was, no edits, because that wasn't just testimony. That was a warning to anyone listening. Meanwhile, our expert witness, a cybersecurity analyst, was prepping to take the stand. He'd done a full breakdown of the metadata, IPs, timestamps, and device usage that tied every account back to the same man. The cross-platform link was airtight. TikTok handle? Matched. Instagram? Confirmed. Email? Registered with the same phone number. Recovery questions? All linked to his birth city. He left digital fingerprints everywhere, and now we were lifting them for the world to see. A public was watching too. By now, the original article had been translated into multiple languages. People from Brazil, the UK, Germany, and Australia were messaging support groups. The story had become a global warning. One woman sent a DM that read, "I was talking to someone with a similar pattern, and I blocked him after hearing your case. You probably saved me." And that was the entire reason we kept going. This wasn't about humiliation or revenge. It was about putting a spotlight where darkness had lived for too long. A few days before the trial, I walked into the final pre-trial meeting. His legal team looked tired. Their confidence? Gone. Their only remaining play was to delay. They filed a motion to push the date, citing emotional distress on their client's part. I responded in court with 3 words. Emotional distress is not a shield. The judge agreed. Motion denied. The trial would begin on schedule. That night, my client and I met for dinner. It wasn't about the case, not really. It was just to breathe. To remind her and myself that this fight wasn't just legal. It was personal, human, necessary. She said something I'll never forget. You know what scares me most? Not the court, not the photos. It's that for a long time I thought no one would believe me. I looked her in the eye and said, "They believe you now. And when that courtroom hears your voice, they won't forget it." A day of the trial started cloudy, fitting in a strange way. There were no reporters outside, no flashing cameras, just the soft sound of people walking into a courtroom, carrying years of trauma and the weight of truth. He was already seated when we walked in. No expression, suit pressed, hair combed. Like he thought dressing up would undo the damage. But no matter what he wore, he couldn't hide anymore. The judge entered. The bailiff called the room to order, and with that, the trial began. Opening statements were short. His attorney went first, using language that sounded rehearsed. This case is about misunderstandings, misinterpreted conversations, emotionally charged exchanges, but not criminal intent. Misunderstandings? That was their angle? We let them finish. Then I stood and said this. This case is not about misunderstanding. It's about manipulation. about a man who used fake identities and psychological pressure to target women, collect private content, and weaponize it. This isn't gray. It's calculated, and we have the receipts to prove it. Then the evidence began. One by one, the screenshots were displayed on screen. Messages that escalated from flirting to control. Photos he sent of himself, his branded work clothing, his desk, his Outlook calendar. Proof that he was who he said he wasn't. Then came the chats, the threats, the line-by-line breakdown of when trust was turned into fear. You could hear the room shift when those messages were read aloud. The charming act he hid behind, torn away. What was left? Just a man caught mid-predation, exposed for who he was. Our cybersecurity expert took the stand next. He explained how the accounts were linked, how IP addresses matched, how email recovery data all pointed to one person, sitting right there. He showed the court the timestamps, the data trails, the photos' metadata. It was clinical, precise, undeniable. His defense didn't even cross-examine him. They knew better. Then, it was time. My client, the first one he threatened, took the stand. She was calm, clear, stronger than I'd ever seen her. She didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She told the court he didn't just ask for pictures. He demanded them, then threatened me with them. I was terrified. I blamed myself. But I'm standing here today because I realized his actions weren't my shame. They were his. The judge nodded, and across the room, for the first time, I saw him fidget. He wasn't just sitting anymore. He was shrinking. Another woman testified next. Then another. Each one added a piece to the puzzle. Different countries, different apps, same pattern. And every time a new voice echoed through that courtroom, the lie he built, the misunderstanding defense, fell apart bit by bit. After a short recess, the final piece of evidence was submitted, a compiled victim timeline, a document showing platform names, chat screenshots, dates, threats, his photos reused across chats, accounts registered with the same IP blocks, all of it in chronological order. The judge took it, read through the summary quietly, then looked up and asked the question that sealed everything. Counsel, do you have any evidence that your client did not operate these accounts? Silence. Then his attorney stood. Your Honor, no. And just like that, the silence he always used to scare others became the silence that sealed his fate. The courtroom was quiet again, not out of respect, out of realization, because everyone in that room, even his lawyer, knew exactly what was coming next. We weren't waiting for if the court believed us anymore. We were waiting for how bad the fall would be. After the evidence was fully submitted and all testimonies were given, the judge called for a one-day adjournment to review final arguments. So we waited. Outside, the air was colder than usual, and strangely enough, it felt calm. My client sat next to me on the courthouse steps. She stared at the sky for a minute, then said, even if the judge gave him nothing, I'd still feel like I won. And she had. She got her name back, her dignity, her peace. He didn't get to erase her. He didn't get to control the narrative. She controlled it now. The next morning, the courtroom filled again, this time with tension you could feel in your chest. Even he looked different. No more stiff posture, no confidence. Just a man sitting small in a wooden chair, waiting for the consequences he never thought would catch him. The judge entered. No hesitation. After reviewing all presented evidence, testimonies, and submitted forensic records, this court finds sufficient grounds to rule as follows. There was no sound, no coughs, no movement, just the sound of truth landing. The defendant's actions demonstrate a clear pattern of digital manipulation, coercion, and targeted harassment across multiple jurisdictions. This is not a case of miscommunication, but one of exploitation. The protective orders are made permanent. Civil judgment is granted in favor of the plaintiffs. All international victim claims are validated and transferred to relevant authorities for criminal processing. Then came the part we all waited for. Pending criminal trials in additional jurisdictions, this court formally refers the defendant for criminal prosecution under Section 2261A, cyberstalking and online extortion of a U.S. citizen, and recommends cooperation between law enforcement agencies worldwide for continued investigation. Translation: he was officially being referred for charges in more than one country. This wasn't just a courtroom loss. This was the start of a global legal collapse. My client exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a year. Another woman, seated behind us, wiped her eyes, not because she was sad, because she was finally free. He was escorted out the side exit, not handcuffed, but very much under watch. His face said everything. No smugness, no arrogance. Just the hollow look of someone who finally understands that anonymity isn't armor. That night, I got an email from the journalist who broke the story. She had been in the courtroom, and she was publishing one final piece. The headline? Not just one voice, how a predator was dismantled by the women he tried to silence. She sent me an early draft, and in the final paragraph, she wrote, "This case reminds us that the internet isn't as anonymous as predators believe. And that silence, it's not weakness. It's just waiting for the right moment to speak." By the next morning, the article had gone viral. Hundreds of thousands of views, tens of thousands of shares. Comments flooded in, not just with anger, but with courage. People sharing their own stories, people reaching out for help, people thanking my client and the other women for stepping into the light. That was the real win. The ripple effect. One voice became many. And the man who thought he could scare women into silence got drowned out by the sound of truth. Weeks passed after the judgment. The courtroom was quiet, but the world around us wasn't. More women came forward even after the case was over. Some had never spoken about what happened to them before. Others had shared but were never taken seriously. Until now. Now, they were heard. And for the first time in a long time, they were believed. My client didn't go back to being the person she was before. Because you don't walk through fire and come out untouched. But she came out stronger. She told me one afternoon, "I still flinch when my phone buzzes. But now, I breathe, I read it, and I know it's not him anymore." That was all I needed to hear. Because sometimes justice isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet. It's in the little moments where fear no longer controls you. His life? Over. At least the version he tried to build. His company blacklisted him across the industry. The news had spread, not just online, but into his real-world reputation. Other countries were moving forward with investigations. He couldn't run. He couldn't hide. And for once, he couldn't control the story. Because we took it from him, and we gave it back to the women who lived through his lies. The last message I got from him wasn't to me. It was through his lawyer. It read, "My client expresses remorse and asks that the parties now focus on healing." Healing? Sure, but not for him. Healing was never going to come from him, or anything he said. It came from the women who stood together, who spoke up, who realized they weren't alone, who found power in being vulnerable and louder when united. And me, I'm still here, still watching, still ready. Because he's not the only one. There are others, hiding behind usernames, behind fake profiles, behind silence, But now, they're not so invisible anymore. Because every time a story like this is told, it lights a signal. And that signal spreads. One victim speaks, then 2, then 20. And suddenly, the silence becomes a wave too loud to ignore. My friends started volunteering for a digital safety nonprofit, helping women secure their online profiles, teaching them how to track red flags, showing them what screenshots to save. She's not a victim anymore. She's a resource, a protector, a lighthouse. She took what almost broke her and turned it into something that now protects other people. That's healing, not forgetting, not pretending it never happened, but choosing to make something better out of what was meant to destroy you. One night, she messaged me this. I still think about that night, the 2 a.m. text. I thought my life was over, and now I realize it was just beginning. And she's right, because sometimes rock bottom isn't the end. Sometimes it's the floor you push off from to rise. If you've listened this far, you already know this story wasn't just about revenge. It was about restoration, of voice, of power, of peace. It was about showing the people who hide behind screens that anonymity is not invincibility. And it was about proving that one voice, even when scared, can still start a chain reaction that brings down a predator. To the women listening, who've been scared, silenced, or manipulated like this before, you are not weak. You are not broken. You are not to blame. I don't care what you sent. I don't care how much you trusted someone. I don't care if you were vulnerable or if you made a mistake. That's not permission for abuse. That's not consent for blackmail. You owe no one your silence. And if someone threatens to ruin you, remember this. They're not powerful. They're cowards with a deadline. Because it only takes one person, one screenshot, one report, one lawyer, one friend, to end the illusion they're hiding. To the predators out there, the ones still operating behind fake usernames and locked profiles, you should feel nervous. Because this story, it's not the only one. We're watching now. And unlike you, we leave evidence on purpose. What happened in that courtroom wasn't just a legal win. It was a signal, a message that says, we're not afraid of you anymore. We're connected now. We share, we speak, and we protect each other. Your playbook is exposed. Your tactics are familiar. And every day, another person learns how to fight back. To the one man who started all this, you thought you had 45 minutes of power. But that's all it took. 45 minutes for me to pull your world apart. You thought hiding your face made you safe. You thought a fake name would protect you. You thought silence would keep you in control. But you forgot something. The internet remembers, and so do the people you tried to destroy. And to anyone listening now who still thinks they're alone, you're not. You're never alone. There are people, strangers even, who will fight for you, stand with you, and burn down every lie someone told you about deserving it. All it takes is one message, one screenshot, one moment of truth, and we'll find them. We'll expose them. We'll hold them accountable, just like we did here. Because the internet may be big, but justice is louder now. And no matter where they hide, they're not invisible anymore.